Want some help carrying them?
But I mean, it doesn't matter about quiet. They bought Charles. And they don't want to spend up to 2, right? So they said they don't want a busy street. You know where they bought? Garwood Avenue. That's a
Bruce, you feeling better?
How are you?
Hi, Al.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wanted to weather, what
I said
happened?
the trunk patrol is gonna.
I had a
shut
shot.
your
I
house.
had kidney issues.
Got your back.
Oh, you did?
They said,
Wow,
I said, it's all
wow.
right.
Better now?
Don't press out on
Yeah, I'm taking it in my eye.
But he bought it, it was a short sale. He referred his brother to me, and then he referred his mother to me, and referred somebody in team.
You sound a lot better than when I talked on the phone.
Oh, yeah. So I got the historical.
Yeah. Look at that.
And then leave it up to them.
Anyway, it's just a.
Sandy, you're over here, honey.
Yeah, I'm glad you're good.
No, it's in the
All right.
highway, because all the traffic.
I'm gonna picture the.
Yeah, I'm gonna put your air traffic thing on there. See it over there.
I go give you 2, right?
Yeah, 15 to me, 18 to Bill, but Bill's not coming tonight.
30, 15 to you.
Yeah, it's separate,
Okay.
so, yeah.
So,
Neither of us are very good. Bill is here today.
Well, first of all, I thought it was like, when the other thing was, I was like, oh, I think this is very I was not expecting that. Yeah, but, yeah, that's right.
I said, because they said 4 people on this,
You should get flip on.
Yeah. That was stupid to end, yeah. I can't see, whatever. So who's on first? I don't know, who's on third? Yeah, third, we go first. Third?
Saturday, 12:15.
I would rather in the morning. That's me.
Yeah, you call him, just train.
Oh, okay.
He
all
lives in
right.
that Garwood train, and then he has to go to Cranford, he has to get picked up.
Okay.
So there was a problem, so.
I mean, didn't matter, I just wanted to show us that
sometimes-
the health benefits contributions.
That's why, you know, that one train that gets into
Ready
Garwood.
to put some slow down? Definitely. Hunting season.
You.
All right, who all wants it?
Everybody's gotta have
Sandy,
it.
you got it?
But Bill's not coming.
Here you go, Sandy.
I have a friend.
I probably do.
Bill's not here.
I'll take a coffee though, if you have, and then drop.
There you go, I got my side.
Listen, I wanna start serving coffee again at council meetings. But you know what? We used to do it, and this was the problem.
It just for
We used to ask one council member to bring the milk, because you come later in the
Yeah,
day.
you coming to the dinner?
Yes, I am.
No, we got AC.
I don't have Ron.
Why does it say like Mark?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the school has one.
Staff still don't get it.
Yeah. Well, because that's the way people have it.
I have my money for Bill to down here, so.
But,
There you go.
so, the council wants to re-rotatingly to bring the milk.
Well, we're missing
And
it.
that-
So I can tell you, like, on Friday, you're trying to bring milk, coffee?
Oh, cool.
I'll
Make you deal. Like, bring a half and half, I'll bring
Let's
it
talk
all.
to them for 2 years.
You can bring whatever you want. You can bring, you wanna bring it?
No, I think I did round up a couple cents.
Bring the half and half, I'll have.
Whatever's easier.
No, 15 is easier. So we would have the coffee, the cup, the cigarette.
Oh, yeah, Bloomingdale.
And Cranberry.
Yeah,
We
it's
don't
right
really
there.
drink coffee in the office.
Right, so you
I
walk
like
out
to
there,
drink
you have
coffee
a
right
Cranberry.
tonight.
Yeah.
So no coffee,
So
no
every
milk,
Cranberry
listen,
Avenue had
Yeah.
a.
forget the coffee, we won't have it.
It's like a continuation.
They're a bunch of brats.
Yeah.
With a tongue.
Yeah, it goes, and it comes right home. You know, just like Cranberry Avenue. Cranberry.
Jeez,
It's blocked off, so I.
right?
Hi, Mike, how are you?
Good evening, Councilman, how are you?
Fine, sir, how are you?
2 days, we had to listen to 375.
Okay.
Oh, why do I do that? Yes.
What's that?
Got your eyes.
You go, boy, you go.
Adam, you notice that this meeting was provided to the Cranford Chronicle, advertised on March the 6th, 2015, and posted in the municipal bulletin board and filed in the office of the municipal clerk, and the public at the time and place according to the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Law, Chapter 231, BL 1975. Everyone, please turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate or any other electronic devices. Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Mayor Lombardo.
Here.
Councilman Martin.
Here.
Councilman Matthews.
Here.
Councilman Pepperzelli.
Here.
Councilwoman Tarantino.
Here.
Councilwoman Tedisco.
Here.
And Council President here today. D is excused.
He is out. Okay, at this point of the meeting, I'll turn the meeting over to the financial chair. You have any opening statement?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to welcome the Mayor and fellow council people and the residents to the second special meeting being held for the purpose of discussing the 2015 municipal budget. At our last special budget meeting, we went through the budget line by line and were able to shave back the budget even more. We were able to reduce the tax impact from 96 on the average home to 85. So the budget stands before everyone tonight. This was done while facing rising costs on some big ticket items, and this was done without reducing services. Tonight, I would like to focus on our discussion on the capital item requests that were distributed to council for review. However, before we go at that, I'd like to discuss the planning board budget. Councilman Neerstead reached out to the planning board and informed the council that he discussed the independent parking study with the chairman, and he is comfortable with us reducing the planning board budget by $4,500. The Finance Committee recommends this funding be moved to the municipal clerk's budget for the purpose of establishing a records management program. I will comment further on this later in my report. Back to the capital items. The Finance Committee met again this week and we spent much time discussing these requests by department heads. We recommend the council accept the administrator's capital request for a sidewalk repair program, and we suggest doing this as part of our DOT project bond ordinance in 2015. The administrator and engineer will price this out, and we can make a determination later if we'd like to do all the work or part fund of it. The preliminary estimate is approximately $60,000 to $80,000. However, can be scaled back when we discuss the actual road projects. The committee also recommends that we act on the police chief's request for a dispatch console of about $41,000 and a dictaphone for about $18,000. This console will replace the one we have, which is from 1995, and the dictaphone will replace one that is 8 years old. The fire chief also supported these recommendations as it will assist for better communication between the two departments. The administrator/clerk also requests that we allocate money to digitize our tax maps and bring our record-keeping system up to date. More research needs to be done on records management system and plan, but we wanted to make sure the council understands the importance of this for the future. The committee took a look at the current record storage, and this is not something we should ignore, as state laws that govern how records are to be stored, maintained, and disposed of. They contain valuable history and are required to be maintained. There is not enough space here, and also preservation of these records is vital. Ms. Ariema will be attending her spring conference next month and will be obtaining more information on vendors that can provide this service. In the meantime, the committee recommends moving $4,500 from the planning board to the clerk, so the clerk can hire an intern or attempt to bring the purging process. The $4,500 will only put a dent in the volume of the records, but it's the start of this process. The Finance Committee recommends that the council appropriate more money for digitizing the tax maps. We've seen these conditions of these maps ourselves, and the system for working these tax maps is very time consuming for the staff. The service of digitizing maps would be spec'd out, and the service is done by professionals. The cost range from $20,000 to $30,000 can be funded in the next 5 years of municipal budgets. This work can begin in 2015, however, council can decide this later in the year. The clerk will also assess vendors at her conference next month. She will provide a report after her conference. The fire department requests a replacement truck for its 1997 Suburban, which is used as fire police and on fire inspections. The Fire Prevention Department also requested to replace the Ford Explorer, which is used for inspections and also responds to the fire scenes. The Finance Committee sees the pros and cons to these purchases, and we want to get a sense of how the council feels about this. The Finance Committee welcomes further discussions on these items you see before you, these capital requests, and any other related matters.
Thank you.
So, I guess everyone has everything in front of them from the department heads. I mean, pretty much the sense that, we're getting from the chief is that the console and the dispatch needs to be replaced. I mean, that's a pretty big ticket item, but these are things that unfortunately, they feel need to be done. And, with the way that everything's expanding, as far as, being modernized, that's something that I don't think that, we can just let go by. With the records management, this is something that, Ms. Ariema has been talking about over the past few years, and I think that we really have to start moving on this for her. And, I think everything is important, but again, everything is open for any discussions that, anybody wants to talk about to, get a sense on how everybody feels about it.
So, I see here, you have your 3-year projections from the police department and from DPW. Do we have a sheet from the fire department? I heard you say something about the Ford Explorer, but do we have?
Unfortunately, I requested that from the fire chief twice, and he didn't submit it in writing, but he did verbalize it at our meeting.
Yes, at our department head meeting, we did bring that up.
As did the fire prevention officer, so they're two separate trucks.
Okay, so, I didn't get to write down, because on everything you were saying, how much was the fire department, the Ford Explorer, and what else were you saying about that?
They want to replace the 1997 Suburban, that red car that's always in the lot. And then the fire inspector has a Ford Explorer that's not kept on the premise, that he retains. They both asked for new trucks. The fire chief asked to replace the Suburban, and the fire prevention leader of the team asked to replace that Ford Explorer.
All right, do we have numbers on those yet, or we don't have that
You
yet?
know how much they cost? A new SUV is about, we can get it for about $27,000-ish through state contract. The Suburban is a 97 and the Explorer is a 2002.
Did I mention the Suburban 45,000?
The Suburban, I did mention a price.
Okay.
We're not gonna buy a Suburban, that's,
No.
we
I
bought
mean,
that then, but,
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think we should just get 2 Ford Explorers, because I don't think they really.
well, one Ford Explorer, but we wouldn't buy that Suburban like that, I mean, that was
No.
excessive, and we
You're
bought that in
absolutely-
97.
You're absolutely correct.
So you're saying 2 Ford Explorers at 27,000?
Well, they asked for 2,
Yeah.
we need to decide whether we're gonna get 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying that, we wouldn't typically get another Suburban, so, if we decide to get the 2,
Okay.
that would be 2 Ford Explorers.
Can we just make sure that that fits with the fire department's needs? I'm all for saving money, but I guess we wanna,
We did check with the fire chief.
and he's okay with you, be okay with the Ford Explorer?
We talked to him and he said, if, they both want 2 new vehicles. We said, well, if you can only get one, who do you want it for? He said, get it for the fire prevention. Leave him with his Suburban. That's what he said. He said that the fire prevention person responds to fires in that truck from his home, and he acts in lieu of, you have the fire chief and then you have the deputy chief. He's there in case one of those other 2 men aren't there in that capacity. He's a former fire chief, so he said, considering that he does that plus the inspections, if we're only gonna buy one truck, he said, consider his first.
Because you've spoken to me a couple times about that, the fire prevention inspector, and if that's the older vehicle, it's not the older vehicle.
No,
But it's the cheaper one to replace, and I've been in the chief's Suburban, there's a lot of stuff in there. My only concern is just want to make sure that we're buying something that's gonna suit the needs.
You're talking
Well,
about
they're
Chief
both
Thorlson's
actually-
Suburban? You're talking about Chief Thorlson's Suburban?
Yeah,
Right, well, that's actually supplied from the county, that's not.
That's not, okay.
The black one, you mean?
The black one.
That's county truck.
Then the Suburban one.
This is the red one,
The
always in
red
the
one that
lot.
sits out front?
Okay, I got you.
It's a
Okay, so that's the
1990.
one, and that's the one that's the 1997.
Correct.
They, actually at our meeting, and I have notes on it, they specifically said they like the Ford Explorer, like the police have just recently
Yeah.
gotten, so,
That's all, if it's
you know,
there, it's
that's
sufficient.
what they,
Yeah.
said, so.
You basically have to decide if you're gonna, and you don't have to decide tonight, but one truck, two trucks, you don't, this is capital, you can do this later on in the year. It's just a discussion, and you don't have to take any action on capital concerning this budget.
Right, well, again, we just want to bring it up to everybody that these are all of the requests by all of the departments, so.
And just to add about the 2 vehicles being requested by the fire department and then the fire prevention, basically the possibility is we can purchase them via a capital bond ordinance because they're trucks. You can't do that with cars, but learn that at the budget training. But basically, the fire prevention, that one, there is a possibility to do a payment over a certain period of time. We were hoping the fire prevention inspector would give us that information, but he was open to purchasing it in the same way that the police purchase their vehicles over usually a 2 or 3 year period of time, and he could use some of his budget for that. Is there anything I'm missing on that one, Sandy, or is that pretty much the story?
No.
So it may not have to be rolled into the capital bond ordinance that we're proposing, but it could still be taken care of this year. And then it's just a matter of, if you wanna do it that way, then a determination should be made about the fire chief's request for the replacement of the 97 Suburban with an Explorer. That would have to be done by a capital bond ordinance as opposed to coming out of this budget.
Do we have to know either way? When would we have to know either way how we're doing it?
I think it's really, a capital bond ordinance would be up to us. I don't think his budget line needs to change right now in order to fit that vehicle in terms of fire prevention. A capital bond ordinance, we can always decide on that later in the year, but since we're talking budget, looking at the full picture, it's a good time to start discussing it. Also, these department heads put their request in about a month ago, and some of the items have been reoccurring on their list for the past year, 2,
Right.
3 years. So I would say if we do have that intention, better to let them know in the beginning of the year rather than decide in October, November, so.
And there are programs through, that the government can participate in, and spread the payments out, it's a lease payment, sometimes you pay, it's 2 years, but I've seen him, the last truck he bought was I think, a 4 or 5 year plan, so that lowers your payments, you pay right out of his budget, that's how we did it last time with the O2. So I'd have to look into what they're offering right now, because it's not something we regulate, and I could see, what kind of plans are available. You can decide this later, and then purchase a car through a lease purchase where you, at the end of the payments, you get the deed and you own the car.
Yeah, my preference would be just to replace the one vehicle this year, delay the Suburban till the next budget year, and try to keep as much out of the capital bond as possible, because I'd like to preserve any bonding room for borough infrastructure, not for equipment. So that would be my preference on this. Because as you can't say everything's the same. We gotta prioritize ranking, and then we gotta figure out if there's any way we can avoid borrowing on vehicles. I'd really like to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, and to add to that, I agree with you completely. Also, given the fact that the fire chief said if you had to choose one, go with fire prevention, I think that really helps us make that decision. And it seems like it would be okay, more than okay, to wait until next year on that item, so why not?
Agreed.
So it sounds like the council agrees to move forward with finding out some details on leasing a vehicle for fire prevention. Okay. So then I think the next item we should discuss is our feelings on a capital bond ordinance for this year. And I have to say, we didn't have to do it last year. We just went to that budget training. The Borough of Wharton, when I spoke to the CFO, they plan to do one every other year, which I think is a nice idea. you know, sometimes things come up, I'm sure they can't stick to that for the next 20 years, things will come up, but I think it's a nice idea. And I have to say, it's not really enjoyable having to advocate for this, but at the same point, we still have to maintain our borough, we have to keep it efficient, we have to keep it up to date. It may not be fun at all, it's certainly not fun at all to spend money on these items, but at the same point, I think it just needs to be done sometimes, so.
And what would be in the capital, what would you be wrapping up in that?
As Councilman Petrozelli said, it would be the police chief's 2 requests for 2015 of the dispatch
The
console
console, the dictaphone?
and the dictaphone. And then those would be the only in a capital bond ordinance
Okay.
specifically for equipment. And then the sidewalk program would go into our DOT bond, and we would make a determination on that on a later date, but we should give the go-ahead if we want to for the administrator and the engineer to seek prices on that. So we can decide, do we want to do the entire sidewalk program, do we want to do a part of it? And so we should probably give them some kind of direction.
Yeah, well, where we're at with that right now is we have a list of sidewalks, so how the engineering does is he'll say like, it's gonna be so many square feet, and then we'll spec it out with the road project. And when the bids come back, let's say, you know, it's not favorable, we can just, you know, shorten that list. Would be most cost effective to bid it with the road project. You get one contractor, you get more of a professional person versus just some, person doesn't have the equipment that a road contractor has. We get a better spec, because we really need to, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I know you all walk a lot, and if you notice, the sidewalks that are lifted by Borough trees, some of those slabs look brand new,
Yeah.
and they are brand new. I just replaced them, and not even a year later, the tree root pushes it right back up. The root is not being cut out thoroughly, and also, whenever we do these things, it's always, keep the cost down, keep the cost down. So sometimes we leave the tree, we should take the tree down. And I think that if we do it through the road project, it'll be more efficient, so.
Bill's on here for that.
Yeah, I know, and listen, I don't like taking down the trees either, especially a beautiful, healthy tree, but if you look at some of those slabs and the concrete's brand new, then something's wrong. And also, the other component we can add in is, when we spec it out, we'll determine the spots, but if we see the slab is good, and you can just lift the slab up, cut the root out, put the slab back down, that's real cost effective, so we wanna try to do some of it that way, but we have to put that bid spec together that way. But the other thing is, you know, looking into different ways we manage the trees and the sidewalk, which is, you know, something I talk about a lot, but we need to deal with this, because you guys walk a lot, you must see how lifted they are. We haven't done sidewalks in, gotta be at least 5 years, right?
It was never done while I've been on
Anybody remember last
council.
time we did it?
I actually do remember, that's because we took out a bond, and that was tree and sidewalk work.
Yeah, it's always combined.
Yeah, and that's how we would do this one too, because maybe that would help us out with some of our tree problems if it happens. to
Yes,
be,
yes,
you know, on
they're
that
always
list.
combined. But a lot of times, these trees, they get taken down because they cause this problem, beautiful trees, but, you know, you gotta decide whether you wanna keep spending money on these sidewalks, or, you know, it costs a lot of money to take down a nice big tree. It costs about $2,000. It costs a lot of money. And it's a beautiful tree.
Mhm.
It's kind of disheartening, but, you know,
Well,
really
maybe something else could be planted that would be
yeah.
a little,
Yeah.
like a better type of
Yes.
tree.
More
Yes.
appropriate for the area.
Right, exactly.
Some of these trees were there when we built up the town, so they're really, those are the ones with those real big roots coming,
Right.
you know, all over the place. But we've already put together the list, now Donald has to go out and inspect it all, and then come up with an estimate, which he would do that, encompass it with the road project, because we're gonna hear about that soon, where, you know, we come and tell you what roads we put in for, what they awarded. That's when the sidewalk will come up with all that, which is gonna be soon, you're gonna be hearing that conversation.
And then the other item that was discussed was the records management. This is something that the administrator has requested for a few years now, and we saw the records ourselves. It is a mess. We actually saw the minute book from 1903, which was really great, especially the history teacher in me, I loved it. But at the same time, I see it disintegrating away. You know, it's a shame that we wouldn't be able to preserve, you know, if we keep ignoring it, essentially, we
Sure.
won't be able to preserve our history, we won't be complying with the law by the state, and it's just time to at least start tackling it, even if it's a little dent. So that's why I support, you know, if we reduce planning board 4,500, move it into records management, start trying to do the right thing there. And basically, you know, it would be nice just to take the 4,500 and bring the tax bill down $2, but at the same point, I think that this records issue cannot keep getting pushed aside.
What's important there is that you can't bond for this, you can't use capital money, you can't
That's
bond,
true.
you have to pay for it cash, so it would be, the best way to approach it is to appropriate money in the budget and keep adding to that year after year, and every year, we do more, we do more, we do more, we do more. And are you ever done? No, it's like the trees, you get rid of some records, you wanna come back, it's gotta be an ongoing thing, but it's something that you have to fund it yourself. So we've always put it off because the budgets are tight, so we say, well, we'll deal with it next year, but if you take the 4,500 and you put it in there in the clerk's line item as start a records management program, it's a start. It's a beginning. We would get an intern from a college or something that is maybe getting educated in this field, and they would come in and start to purge these old records. According to the records retention schedule, they can be destroyed, but you have to understand the value of them, and should they be destroyed? Should they be retained? That's something that an intern can start working on and start sorting them out, because even, no matter what company you hire to scan them, microfiche them, whatever you're gonna do, somebody has to sort them first.
Right.
Doesn't accounting have something that we could piggyback on with this? I thought they had this as a shared service,
Well,
or something that they.
there was a grant out a few years ago called Paris Grant, which individual municipalities had a very hard time applying for, but the county did. And what they offered was, every year they would do it, and they would decide what they're gonna buy with the grant. One year they, like, it was shelving and, you know, things like that, and I'm like, I don't need any more shelving, I was hoping that they would hire someone that would come around and purge records, and they did, and what they did was they purged the records, at the end of the year, we have to purge just those current year records, get them out of our way, make room for new ones. We do that, otherwise we'd really be in trouble. What I'm talking about is old records, records that have value to this municipality, records that I know are valuable because I've been here for so long and I was with the former clerk and things like that, that on a schedule are destructible, but shouldn't be destructive because they mean something to this town. These are the things I'm talking about.
Right, for example, like projects. If a project was done 20, 30 years ago, we have the folder, the file
Right.
on that project. Why would we want to throw that away
You
if
can,
someone,
according to law.
right, even if you can, it makes no sense to do that, especially in our town where we're not doing a big project every other year, so.
Well, plus, I mean, even what Tina had showed us, that there were some records that actually had notes on there from Mrs. Poliver that
Mhm.
said, do not throw away,
Right.
because there was something important in there that needed to be, you know, looked at again.
Mhm.
So,
It should be preserved.
you know, you have to keep it.
We also have to think of it from a disaster recovery point of view. I know that Cranford lost all those records too.
They lost everything.
They lost everything, and I think we gotta kind of think of it from that point of view. Whatever it is we do, we have to have like multiple backups and, you know, locating things off-site, things like that. Because, you know, if these are physical records, you have a fire or some other type of tragedy you can't even foresee.
Right.
They're not, I think we do need to start, at least start in that direction.
No.
Right, and right now we have-
Files, but you gotta put money into it.
Right, exactly, and it's not cheap to get fireproof cabinets, we have
No.
some, they're very expensive, and they're full, they're busting at
They're
the
full and,
seams.
you know,
They weigh
So,
about 1,000 pounds.
right now, you know, we have those fireproof safes, but we busted out of them years ago, and I store stuff, down the street, there's a storage place, what is it, I don't know the name of it, you might,
That's out there.
yeah. We have a room there, we store records there, we store permanent records there, we're storing them not according to DARM, you have to store them in a climate controlled, certain conditions, they're not. If that place burns down, we're gonna lose our records. We have no place to put them, you can't build a second story here, you can't store them here, that room is full of records. So they should be filmed because they're not preserved there. God forbid something happens, we're gonna lose our records. Now, is the minute books there? No. There's stuff there that I don't think it would really impact us if we lost it, but it is a violation of law, and it should really not be preserved that way. We are busting out, if you go in the zoning office, there are so many maps in there, everywhere. What are these maps? What are they for? What properties, what developments, they should be sorted and stored and filmed. Because you can't even get, you don't even know where they are, because you have to have some memory to know where everything is. So the finance committee toured, I took them around and showed them what I was talking about. So they got a visual of what I mean, it's not just me talking, they saw it.
and I'm sure anyone else that wants to go
Yeah,
back there.
anyone who wants to
She'll,
see it.
she'll be a tour guide for that, no problem.
I'll show you what I'm talking about. And it's really, she likes history, I like history. A lot of these records mean a lot to this municipality. And if you just come in off the street, you would follow a schedule, you wouldn't know it.
So, putting $4,500 into this now, but what, do we know what it's gonna cost or what it's gonna, you know,
It's gonna
what
cost,
it takes to do this?
yeah, it costs a lot of money. You would hire a company that would come in and start to take these records, film them on whatever, now, years ago it was microfilm, and I don't even know what they're doing now. I'm not sure because IT changes so much. But they take the records and they preserve them. And then they take the actual paper document because the government says we still have to preserve that. They haven't yet released us from that, where we could actually start destroying these old paper records. So, like the minute book that Sarah referred to, that book is really like disintegrated. And years ago, someone typed it over, like in the olden days, you could tell it's an old type. So you have the words preserved, but the actual book is disintegrating. So this company would come, they take the paper and they take like the oil out of it and preserve it, and then they actually put it in something that preserves it. It's not the Declaration of Independence, but you're required to keep it until Trenton decides that we can start to get rid of that stuff. So it's a big process. It would be ongoing. First, it's a purging, cleaning out, sorting, because a company doesn't do that. We have to do it. The problem is that we don't have time to do it. We do a little bit here and there. I've done, you know, I grab a section, get it done, but and then it regenerates itself. They come back. So
Right, so this
it
is
costs a lot of
line
money.
that we have to keep putting money into every year.
My recommendation is you take money, and like Sarah said, I bring this up every year, and then we cut the budget, we say, we'll look at that next year, we'll look at that next year. And we've been saying that for a while now, but it has to come a point in time when you make a decision, you start saying, even if it's $20,000 a year, and we chip away at it, we chip away at it, we chip away at it, and we keep doing it, and it's ongoing. Because, you know, no matter who your clerk is, no matter who works here, it's an ongoing thing.
Once you establish the money in the budget,
Right.
I take a say you say it out to it, it doesn't hurt.
It's there.
The budget,
It's a
it's
less,
there.
So we're
lesser
starting-
tax impact
Right.
Yeah.
than if you were to just put in $40,000, that's
Right.
over $20 a home.
Right.
So you wouldn't wanna do that, you
Right.
try to avoid that.
But we
Make
start
it
to,
fit.
what I'll do with the 4,500 is I'm gonna look for an intern through the colleges, maybe I can get somebody over the summer. We can start to purge and box things up, label it. We're gonna have this, we're gonna preserve, we're going to scan. So at least when we do hire the vendor, I have stuff to get them started with. I don't wanna hire a vendor and say, wait a minute, come back in 6 months, we gotta get everything done.
How many years do you think that this would take with all of our records?
Like I said, it's ongoing, you know. When I go to this conference, I'm gonna see like what is going on. I haven't looked in a long time, I haven't been to a conference, I didn't go last year. I haven't been to League in years, that's where you really get this exposure, but I wanna see what they're doing now. How are we preserving records, what type of technology are we using? I'm gonna come back to you with information, because I'm not even sure these days.
So then that'll say how long, you know, we actually have to fund it.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna find out all the information, I'm gonna write a report.
So does this mean that we're all in favor of cutting the planning board 4,500, increasing the clerk line 4,500?
Yes,
I
I'm,
think we have to look at consensus with that.
So that's good.
what else was there?
Well, we're back to the console and the,
Yeah, and there was also the tax map digital situation is, you don't have digital tax maps, they're old pieces of paper, they have, when you have a subdivision, you're supposed to update the tax map. That kind of fell by the wayside years ago. The assessor is supposed to tell the engineer, there's a lack of communication there. I kept up with it for a long, long time where I would take the map and I would pencil it in and I would write the notes on the side, and that fell by the wayside. Your tax maps are not updated, so they don't have the subdivisions, and you would hire a company, they actually go out and look, not just take a record, they look at the subdivision, you know, the new number, and they create a whole new tax map, and it would be digital based, so that when we have to access that stuff, it's not, as I showed the committee, one thing I have to do as the clerk is 200-foot radioways, and they're requested by the public, people are doing development or whatever, and
usually about a couple of week minimum,
I do
right?
I do about 2 a week. Maybe once in a while I won't have one, but then I get 3 the next week. And I take the map and I use a protractor and I make it be 200 feet, and I actually go around like this, and all the other municipalities will send me a map, and they have, you see the digital lines comes from the computer, and I sit there and I go like this, and it makes me laugh, but
And put the pieces of paper together.
that's the funny part. When I have to do like a radio list for a
Yeah,
piece
yeah.
of property that's on the border of a neighboring town, I have to go get their map, I have to call their assessor, can you get me, well, now I have the maps, but I have to actually cut it out and glue it together and size it, and it take me about an hour to figure it right and get the plot right, and then I, like a, blueprint there, and I get it all right, and then I sit there with my little thing. And if it was computerized, it would take me about 3 minutes to get it done, where this way it takes me, an hour.
Right. And the other thing is developers look at this, so we
Yeah.
probably send a certain message when they look at this.
We're funny.
Bring your protractor.
Right, parents are funny. They made fun of my protractor, but the finance committee, they got to kick out of it. But that's how I do it. So it would really, it's time for us to start looking at technology a little bit more closely and getting on board with our neighboring towns and getting a little more sophisticated. There's another piece of tax related software that this costs a real lot of money, probably about $100,000, and you can't bond it. But it's you hire a company and you pick a starting date. Let's say you pick 2005. They come in and they take everything and they sort it in a computer by address, and it's a whole digital screen where you take, when you get in there, and it has public access, it shows when the house was built, how many people bought it, the square footage, the number of, any upgrades, like if you got a permit for, improvements. You hold the cursor over the block and lot, and all that stuff comes up.
Wow.
And you hire this company, and they come in and they take all the data, they put it in, and then after they finish, it's up to the staff to keep maintaining. Like this would even have like all the tree work we did.
Communication,
Yeah,
right, between
if
the
there's
resident
people
and.
calling up,
Oh.
if the water company did,
Right,
everything goes in there, and it's
Oh,
accessible by address.
it's
which-
wonderful, but
It's
$100,000.
a lot of money, a lot of money, but it's also good for Oprah, because when we get Oprah requests, like, okay, you got the property card, in this office you got the tax file, in this office you got other, and when you get Oprah requests for an address, boom, you go in one spot, and it's all there. Now, we manage with our own ways, but someday, you're gonna have to get the technology and get up there, so you're gonna have to. You can't do business and be, competitive with your municipalities, neighboring municipalities, to bring people in when you're so behind.
Antiquated, right.
Antiquated.
Well, it sounds like at least digitizing them is a good next step.
Once you
Which
get,
it's still money and it's still costly, but it's not $100,000. So I feel like that's the least we could do to start in the right direction with that.
Right.
I know nobody goes to the leading municipalities, but
I'm gonna go this
it's
year.
got a bad rap, but it really is a wealth of information. You will get so educated there on government and what's available to government, and then sometimes you feel a little silly because you're like, wow, we don't have any of that, Sandy and I getting the new software from Edmonds, we feel like, we're really moving up in the world. That's real good software.
Mhm.
It's really much more of an improvement of what we work with. And the circumstances that we got it under, were a little upsetting, but, we're happy that we're finally gonna get some. This software, staff can encumber, requests at the desktop, instead of submitting us a piece of paper, instead of that delay. It's all gonna be eliminated, they'll be able to do that right there, which is, if you notice, we always get that comment in our audit. Uncovering.
Yes.
This should correct that problem.
So, no more comments, Mr. Fisher.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay?
Well, we're taking
Deal.
a picture again.
All right.
Did you guys want to talk about the chief and the console and the Dick through the grant?
Well, I went back and I saw that the police chief had put the console in his
Capital request.
capital request from 3 years ago. That's been in here, so he's been asking for that for a while, for this year.
Right,
You brought it to 2012.
Right, so it is the right time to be purchasing this, I guess what I'm saying is there's no reason to ask the department heads to put together a project, a projection, a 3-year projection, if we're not gonna then purchase it at the time,
or event at some point.
at some point.
Right.
So this was the year that it came up. So it's the right time to purchase it. And he did take me in there and showed me all the screens and all the different things and how they don't relate to each other and all the old equipment and wasted space because there's,
Right.
you know, it just makes sense to purchase it.
And actually, I think within the past year, there was a communication issue from dispatch, and basically the fire department helped out the police department. So that's why the fire department is also very supportive of this, because the two departments will be able to work better and communicate better with this improvement.
Yeah, and some of the pieces that are inside the console are from the original, when they built the building in 1983.
Right.
So it's not gonna happen all in one swoop, it's gonna be a twofold process. So, you know, we have things that are on that dispatch console that, again, have been here since 1983, and it involves, you know, the alarm system. And, you know, there's been some upgrades over, you know, over the past few years, but again, it's the original 1983 equipment.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the chief has said there's certain components or parts that he can't get anymore, or a company won't service it or something like that. Is that correct, Ann? Did he say anything like that?
I'm trying to read the letter, and I believe so, he did.
Nothing has tubes anymore, so, you know.
Yeah, it's really.
Yeah, the-
What's that?
It's an
Escape
electron
trap.
console that reached its limit, it's 30 years old.
So all these things
Yeah.
are discussions, but then none of these decisions have to be made this evening. It's just, you know, part of the financial.
I think we have to take the initial step and at least have an open discussion. So we know the way we would like to go on it, so.
So perhaps we can bring it up at the next council meeting, when Council President Neerstead will be there too, and we can make a determination if we want to put that together. I mean, the finance committee's in favor, obviously. We have two other members of council and the mayor, but with the council president not here, maybe, you know, there's no rush. So I think if we talk about it on Tuesday, we can see what everyone thinks, and then we can let the department heads know the council's intention.
Okay.
Anything else, Councilman?
With the DPW,
Yeah, well, the DPW was, you know, we're looking at some things down there with regard to equipment and stuff, and they did make some capital requests, but we want to gather a little bit more information before we discuss those requests, and we didn't get a chance to do that.
Right.
So
We
that
need more information from the
conversation's gonna come up
superintendent.
again. You have his
Okay.
request in front of you, but as a committee, we just need to do a little bit more work on that, so we're not there yet. But that conversation will be coming up before we go for bond, and we will possibly be considering some items for that department as well.
And if I may mention, since it came up at the last special budget meeting, the bucket truck, Council President Neerstedt was saying that it's broken, it's down, doesn't work. It actually was fixed. I pretty much knew that at the last meeting, but I wanted to triple check before I said anything. But I double checked with the Superintendent of Public Works. It is working. He said, for our purposes of light tree maintenance and putting up holiday decorations and things like that, we're fine. So at this point, the Finance Committee basically does not feel the need to put forth a recommendation for purchasing a bucket truck. So, just wanna give everyone an update.
Thank you.
You?
If I actually could switch to the regular budget, I just wanted to point out that I reviewed this within the past week since I got the most recent budget worksheets, and I just wanted to point out, I hope the rest of the council realizes this, but a lot of the paid or charged were moved. So from what we looked at last meeting, there was actually more money spent in a lot of these departments. Treasurer's Department, for example, assessment of taxes, there was a big jump there. But previously it was 4,000, now it's 16,000, which it was actually slightly over budget from what was allocated originally at the beginning of the year. So keeping that in line with the 16,000 makes sense to me for sure. Police, that also, those numbers changed, salaries, wages, as well as other expenses a little bit. So that one was different. Planning board, that was also different. Last meeting, we were looking at about 7,000 in paid or charged, now it's 15,500. Legal, that was also a bit of a change, about $1,000. And there were some more on the last page as well about statutory expenditures, state unemployment insurance, and so on. So I think it's just important to point that out, and maybe if not everyone realized that, just so that we know the most up-to-date calculation of what our expenses were in 2014. And that if it seemed like certain areas could have been cut more, now, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that
Well,
certainly
did
more
you
was spent.
Find any area that we tried cutting at the last meeting that you feel should not be cut now?
Those areas were not really affected by this
Okay.
when I looked at it, so I still feel comfortable with those cuts.
Okay.
Also, I want to clarify about what happened at the last meeting concerning an encumbrance that Council President Neerstead brought up concerning the planning board. There was an issue whether or not we could spend money when it's encumbered. And Sandy and I were like deer in the headlights, because we don't remember or know everything off the top of our heads. Well, the next morning we went and checked.
Well, only 99% right.
What happened there was, the planning board never took action on that money, so no, it was never encumbered, it couldn't be encumbered. That money is going back to the municipal,
Fund balance.
yes, because they never took action, so therefore, we weren't remiss in not encumbering something, there was nothing to encumber.
Okay.
The planning board never, they asked for money in a budget, they never took action on that.
And are expected.
Right.
So.
They asked for money for a study and a plan, they're working on the studies, but they never got to the plans. We should have probably not funded the vote in the same year, the way the wheels of government move so slow.
Right, but unfortunately, when you try to follow a board's recommendation, especially given that we want to support redevelopment,
Right,
Now, what if it
We
went
were
the
in a
other way
tough spot.
around and, you know, we didn't have the money to
Right.
spend? So-
exactly.
So that money goes into
so back to,
surplus for
back,
next year?
back to the
It'll
fund
balance at
balance,
the end.
yes.
Fund balance,
Fund
okay.
balance.
And then can they, if they know that, can they re-request that money?
Sure, they can sit with you and ask for anything. It's
Okay.
up to you whether or not you're gonna give it. But they cut their budget back a lot this year because, now they're left to do the two plans and, you know, if they have a redeveloper on board, we don't have to pay for that, the developer can. But we have, the developer has to be on board first.
Sure.
We can't go back and recoup the money that we spent already.
Gotcha.
Councilman, anything else?
I think that was pretty much it, that's all that we had.
Okay. Any general comments from the council?
So we're not gonna make, well, where are we? Are we not making any changes, or we're gonna keep the changes that we talked about last meeting?
The one, right, we're keeping all changes from last meeting. This meeting, we just determined that we'll reduce planning board 4,500, add it to clerk for records management.
Okay.
And then we determined that we will, well, actually, I don't know if everyone agreed, but we should agree now. If we'd like the engineer and the administrator to work on providing us information for the sidewalk program. We all agree with that,
Yes.
right? So that's that. And then the matter of doing a capital bond ordinance this year for the dictaphone and the console will be discussed at Tuesday's council meeting when the council president is there, and we can make a determination at that point. Then the only other item was the tax maps, which cannot be, again, it can't be bonded, and it cannot really be in this year's budget. So the way we would potentially do that is with a special emergency appropriation, and we can then spread it over 5 years. And although the purchase can be made in 2015, we wouldn't actually start paying for it out of our budget until 2016, but there's no interest on that, right?
No,
Or
Yeah, you're just borrowing money from yourself.
we would basically be borrowing money from ourselves, the 20,000 or 30,000, however much it costs. And then each year, we would
You fund it.
basically fund it, yeah, pay ourselves back.
Over 5 years.
Mhm.
How are we gonna handle the vehicle for fire department?
Oh, that one, we determined that we did not want to do the fire department replacement for the Suburban.
Right.
But we wanted to take action for the fire prevention
Right.
and do a lease program once we get more information and spread that over a period of time with
Right.
payments.
Could we
I'll
just-
try-
could-
I'll-
Could we just reserve that until the fire commissioner is on board with that?
We can talk about it Tuesday as well.
Just bring it up on Tuesday, just to
Sure.
make sure that that's, yeah.
Right.
in the meantime, I'll try to find out what's going on with leasing, although I don't know if I'll be able to have it to you by tomorrow for the packet, but I'll do my best.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, that's something.
everybody satisfied with the conversation about the budget and the capital at this point?
Two questions. One thing I've assumed, I guess I should ask explicitly, on the last page, LoSAP toward the bottom, even though the committee approved an increase in that, I see that it's going down. I assume that's because we're envisioning less people eligible for LoSAP?
Well, I already have those calculations, because they're required to submit those to me in January. So that's what you have to pay right now. But when you're increasing LoSAP, if you get more responses next year, that number will go up. That's an actual reality number, that's it.
So this $40,600 is with the increase?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's only $600 altogether.
612.
Right.
No, I know the increase was small, but just that it went down because of budget.
Yeah, you have less, you
It's
have
based
less.
on the eligible people.
Less.
Right, so basically the 40,000 in this year's budget is to pay those that achieved it in 2014.
Correct.
Correct. That's how we know dollar for dollar.
Yes.
What the cost is.
Correct, yes.
And one other item, I just wanted to make a final plea to see if we could restore all or part of the senior director's cut in compensation. As I recall, we cut about $5,000 out of the roughly 10,000 or so. You know, I was against that cut. I'd be willing to accept half a loaf or part of a loaf on that. I think it would be a matter of good faith if we could do that. Perhaps restore at least some of it. And I know that Lou told me he was considering it, the committee was considering it. I just wanted to bring that up for the full council and for the mayor. You know, Mayor, you can tell us how you feel about it too. But I think it would be a good thing if we restored all of it. But like I said, I'm willing to compromise on it.
Before everybody comments, I just want to let everyone know that right after we took action to reduce the salary of the mayor, wrote to community development and asked money, to give us money from contingent right now to restore that, and then when considering our grant application to increase it, the mayor has told me that they are not going to entertain that at all, and that we are getting cut even further.
And if I may add to that, it's $1,500, $1,000 from last year that was given out overall, and except the additional programs included the program this year, $500, so it's a $1,500 cut.
Wow.
So,
So does that mean that if we're being, I know they have a different cycle. It's not the
Right.
January to December, it's August?
It's September 1st.
September 1st, so September on. So basically, does that mean if we're getting cut from community development, that our budget is actually, basically,
We have enough to pay for
will we
it.
have enough to
Might not.
pay her and the programs for September to December? If anything, I'm thinking then, hearing this news, that maybe we need to increase it for senior programs, to make sure they don't get cut, not so much with salary. I agree that, you know, it's very unfortunate to have to cut a salary, but at the same point, we definitely don't wanna cut programs, and we did discuss this with that person afterwards, and, you know,
So
it's
should
a
we-
tough conversation to have, but.
So should we increase the line for programs?
How that works is in November, we submit a grant application to community development. They go through a process, and they're gonna decide pretty soon, we're gonna get a letter saying what we're getting for a grant cycle that will start September 1st. We kind of think we're gonna get the same thing, we've got the same thing for like the last 3 years, but we got a big cut 3 years ago, $5,000.
I remember.
So we kind of based the budget off that, but now with the information the mayor has given us, you know, Sandy and I talked about it, and we, you know, we had this problem where we, like in November, we start looking at these things and we're like, you know, getting a little nervous with the money in the budget. So what would happen to us if you didn't increase it, we would tell her,
Cut programs.
uh-uh.
So then, does that mean, I kind of see this two ways, given that this happens later in this year. Are we okay leaving the money as it is right now, and we know for a fact we won't cut senior programs? Or do we need to increase this 1,000, 1,500, 500, whatever it may be, to ensure that we don't cut senior programs? Because I definitely don't want to do that.
Well, let me ask you a question. One of those that you think is getting cut, is that,
They're all getting cut, right?
is that for the
1,500
bus
total.
too?
Total,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's total of 1,500.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I'm currently working on the bus. one of the issues that they've been bringing to me is the bus schedule, and we're trying to revamp the bus schedule. And I've been talking to Tina, and she said, it's fine, you can rework the bus schedule, but just don't increase any more stops because it's gonna
Hours.
cost you more money,
Right.
hours. So, and I don't know that, that may be something that they want, is to actually go to more places, which would increase it. So if they're gonna, and I could stay within it, which not increase it, but if it gets cut, we may have to put more money into that, because I don't wanna have to cut the bus program.
Well, the other thing is that we start running out of money, like on the bus driver, we run out of money, the community development money in November. So if you're funding September 1st, by November, we're already done with that grant, we're already back in our own budget. But at the end of the year, there's always the option for the CFO to transfer monies, but
Then again, we have.
and that's
super
playing a
tight
game that
budget,
if you don't,
so.
if you don't have enough money to transfer, which that's a real scary prospect, you would have to cut programs. But if that was ever reality, I think cutting programs would be probably the least of our worries, if we were that tight.
Yeah.
But I also
Right.
reached out to the community development gentleman, as of far as this morning. He says that in the future, there could be more creative ways to get extra money in the process. He has things he's willing to share with us.
That's good to know. So at this point, Sandy, what do you think? Because our grant will end of August of this year. Do you think we can make it this year and maybe it may have to be increased next year? Or do you think we should increase it this year a little bit?
I think you'll probably be okay for $1,500.
Okay.
But I just wanna mention that we really did up her program line already 2,000 in this budget compared to last year, so, just something to keep in mind.
Right.
Side note about the program.
So did we cover that already, not even knowing that there was gonna be a $1,500 cut?
The way the grant works in our budget, we had to,
Well, we covered it based on her projections of the program she's gonna run this year. And, I'm not sure the projection was, accurate or not,
Right, based on
for lack of a better word, so.
Right.
If she cancels things over the summer, for vacation purposes, various vendors aren't available, there might be a little more flexibility in her budget to get her through the end of the year. So,
Right. Didn't it depend like when holidays fall? There's a few factors that play into, will they hold all the programs that they plan to?
Right.
So I'm just happy to hear that we won't be cutting senior programs this year. We don't have to increase this,
No.
which is also good. So I'm good leaving it as it is.
Okay, let's leave it as it
Agreed.
is. We upped it.
Okay,
I would concur with that.
okay.
Anyone else? Now we'll continue the meeting. Okay. Minutes, communications, ordinances, committee reports, officers' reports. Public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to address the mayor and council, please step to the microphone, state your full name and address. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. We missed you last
Does he
time.
get 6 because he
Yeah,
wasn't
well.
here last time?
I'll be kind because you weren't here last time.
I get an extra.
5 minutes.
Wow, sounds like, we almost get 5 minutes. Now, good evening, Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, council, Bruce Patterson, 325 Ave, and I'll just make one comment, I did have other. But the records retention that we're talking about, that goes back to 1903 with the minutes and things like that, possibly the open space trust fund that comes down from the county, one of the elements of the open space trust fund is historical. So, I mean, something, maybe we could chase that direction, trying to get a grant from the open space trust fund. The good possibility is, I'm sure all the other towns have the same issue with a lot of old records that they saved. I'm sure they just don't throw it away.
Yeah.
Because we all care about historic preservation. So possibly you can get together with a bunch of other towns and come up with something to go to the county and ask them to do the open space trust fund program towards the record retention of our old records, not only Garwood, but all the other towns.
Well, that's a very good idea, and when open space allows us to get money through a grant process, they provide us with an application, and they tell us the grant criteria. And though you're right, the name of the program is historic preservation as part of it, never have I ever seen a grant application that says, hey, yo, how do you wanna do some historic preservation? I've never seen anything about that. It's about open space, it's about recreation. But as far as gathering and going to the county and asking them to do something or fund something, that's to me, a legislative decision, and a legislator should do that, not a staff person, you know.
Okay,
And I
but
believe
you're
I
saying,
actually
see,
brought that up.
no, see, what you're saying is the county is dictating our money that goes to them for what we should be doing to them. So possibly you can get into the loop of that, where instead of the county dictating, at least you say, listen, if you're gonna dictate to us, then dictate to us that it should be for records retention this year. So something like that.
I'm not sure that the funding was established for that, but again, I feel like that's a legislative thing, not a staff person's responsibility.
Well, yeah, I don't, not to argue back and forth, but I don't see that being a legislative thing. I just see it being part of the element of the open space trust fund covenants. And
It's not for me to dictate how the county's gonna manage that.
Mayor,
but that's
I
what I'm saying,
have
more
a comment on
towns,
this, but I'll save it
more
until
towns
after.
possibly asking for that as a
Legislators.
grant program under the open space trust
She's
fund.
saying we should do that.
Right,
Right,
We along with other towns.
right.
legislators, not staff people, I'm saying, all legislators.
Oh, legislators, you
She's
mean
saying we
council
should do
members.
it,
They're
not.
like- they're
Council
like-
members, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very sorry.
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's actually what I mean.
That's what I
Yeah,
mean.
but,
That's good, that's a good idea.
I did have a comment on that, but do you want me to wait until you're done?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it Middlesex County?
Yes.
Okay, Middlesex County built a storage facility for their municipalities to store documents like this. That would be wonderful if the county would do that for us. So that's something that I believe I either did it publicly or privately, but I definitely brought that up, at least on one occasion, that this is something that Union County could do for its municipalities, but obviously it would take a lot more work. I think we would have to work closely with other municipalities. If all 21 of us come in and ask for it, it will be a lot more powerful than if just Garwood asks, of course.
yeah, but possibly our administrator could reach out to another administrator just to find out if they really do have the same issues with
I
this
already
store.
know. I mean, I have to reach out to the administrators, clerks. This is a clerk's responsibility, records management's part of the statutory duty of the clerk. And I know with the clerks in Union County at least, you know, we do get together 4 times a year, and this is one thing we always talk about, and we all are struggling with the same problem. We have no space, we have no mechanism, and the facility that Sarah referenced in Middlesex County, I had the privilege of touring it, and it is a phenomenal facility. Not only do they store the records, but they do what I said to them. They treat them. They take out the oil from people's fingers, they make the paper preserved, and they store them in climate controls in this facility, and this is a service that's offered to the municipalities in Middlesex County. If Union County produced something like that for its municipalities, that would really solve, I mean, you need a large piece of land. This building is gigantic, and they're busting out there too. And also as legislators, you know, one thing Trenton needs to do is to start to let us destroy these records. I mean, they're not gonna be preserved forever. Paper is gonna,
Right.
it's not.
If you have a digital copy, what's the
Right,
point of keeping
right.
paper 100
You know,
years?
it's costing the taxpayers so much money to retain something that, if you have it on digital, why would you continue to do that? It doesn't make any sense to me. That's where legislators need to go to Trenton and fight to lobby to change law.
If I could just interject, you know, when we took that little tour with you, there were records back to 1902 that the paper was, you could see it, it was actually visibly deteriorating already.
Disintegrating.
So, you know,
I welcome anybody who wants to see what I'm talking about with their eyes to come and take a look. And this is just little Garwood. I can't imagine. I mean, somebody referenced Sandy, the clerk in Cranford, when after Sandy, they have some of our records because they're our construction code department. She called me and said, everything's done. I said, oh my God, what are you gonna do with it? And she had it freeze dried where they take the water out, but we lost a lot of records. We lost records for Sandy because Cranford has our construction records, which I plan on getting back. I've already made arrangements with Cranford to let me have them back, but I have no place to put them. I need to purge, I need to clean out, sort, and organize, because those construction records are important to the people of Garwood. There's history there, what happened to their houses, and I have no access to it. I don't know it. I get requests for it often. I have to send them to Cranford. they don't have the record. I'd like to know where and what these records are. I just, have a place to
Was
put
our,
it.
some of our records were destroyed in Cranford?
Yep, they obviously got money from FEMA to, records when they get wet have to be treated. They freeze dry them, and how that restores them, I'm not really sure. But you have to hire a company to come in, but Cranford was underwater, all the records are in the basement. And they were
Yeah, I
all
was
destroyed.
actually there, Mike. They actually had a trailer that was just complete building department records.
Our records are part of that.
It was a freeze-dried trailer that was sealed up, and they were
So
trying to
we-
get the moisture out of it.
I
We
don't-
lost some of our stuff.
I don't know what we lost, because I don't know what we
don't
had to
think they
begin
were
with.
able to save everything.
I can't tell you what was lost or any of that. I have no knowledge of that. That was all done, those records were put there before I worked here. I would like to get them back. I believe they should be housed in this municipality.
So Bruce, you're saying through the open space that there should be funding there for us?
Yeah, the Open Space Trust Fund has three different elements. One of them is for historic.
Historic preservation, I don't think that means records, but
Let's
they
find
can
out.
make a case.
Yeah, let's find out.
It's a need.
I'll take the initiative, I'll find out.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much for the very active discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? The regular meeting of the mayor and council will be held on Tuesday, March 24th, 2015, in council chambers, 7:15 p.m. Workshop session will start at 7 p.m. It will be a public hearing in council chambers on ordinance 15-05 on Tuesday, March 24th, 2015, at 7:15 p.m. or sooner thereafter. Have a motion to
Mayor,
adjourn?
before you adjourn,
Yes.
I would just like to take a moment to thank the committee, Councilman Petrozelli,
Thank you.
Councilwoman, what's your last name?
Hey, I've never, so I was going to say I've never changed it, but that's not totally
Went
true.
back for a second and
Not
got
from
it
marriage
right.
though.
I know they put in many, many hours doing the budget. Every time I called, either one of them, they were going to a meeting, coming back from a meeting.
Even as far as today.
I'm sorry?
I think they had a meeting today.
Yes.
They did.
Yes.
Yes.
A lot of work, and I'd just like to say thank you for all your time and efforts you put into the budget.
And please
Thank you.
don't not remember to thank us for putting out the ashtray in the front.
Oh,
which
that's
is
right, I
now
did, I
a-
saw
look
it
at
much
this.
safer.
There's it looks like a fireproof one out there now, so.
And I'd also like to continue that conversation and thank the staff for their input. And
That's-
also our professionals. Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
You're right, I would be missing forgetting.
So a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.